From one TVZ to another, we have got ourselves the next matchup here in the Worlds bracket, and it is going to be Clem going up against Lambo. The invincible Clem potentially online. Let's see if he can continue looking as good as he does online. Joining me to my left-hand side to talk about this match, ZG and Roddy once again. And let's just start with it. It is Clem going up against Lambo here. ZG, Clem in the hyperbolic time chamber of TVZ almost, it feels like, over these past couple of years. He has to go up against your Reina. He has to go up against your Serral. And online, he's able to do it time and time again. So can Lambo pose a threat to him here?
I want to say yes. Apparently, you know, there's been some rumors about how much he's doing well, I suppose, for the past week. TVZ, I think Kat's talked more about that for the cast. But also, I know that Lambo has actually displayed some really top tier TVZ in some of the Open Cups, like really amazing, super fast, super on point, just in terms of multitasking as well as the pacing of the game. And if he was playing at his absolute 100%, plus use that big brain of his for some strategy, you know, he could absolutely defeat Clem. But Clem's just the solid bet. It's a mechanical matchup that he is world renowned in, so he is the solid bet to win this.
That's fair. That is fair. Roddy, your thoughts coming in to Lambo versus Clem?
Yeah, I kind of agree with everything that Zombie Grub said there. And on top of that, it is kind of the season, James. We are 2-3 weeks away from entering the stomping ground of Clem with the DreamHack Masters Europe Regionals coming up once more. I think this is very tough for Lambo. I think out of all the players in this bracket, even including Oliveira, I think this is the toughest draw for him. He's been pretty vocal about it in the past, where he said that, you know, someone like Gabe is incredibly good, but he feels that if he plays his best, he can do it. But if Clem is truly playing his A+ game, that he feels untouchable, that he just feels too quick, too all over the place. So it's a tough draw. The numbers don't lie historically. They went up against each other 40 times, and Clem won 32 out of the 40 encounters. Like, that's a pretty dominating record.
Yeah. I can't extract too much as well from the games Lambo played in the previous bracket, ZG, when it came to him going up against Oliveira, because Oliveira was kind of throwing things out that were a little bit different to what other people were throwing out. So I can't really take much stock from that, TVZ.
Yeah, I guess not. You reminded me of it, though, and honestly, even though Oliveira might have been throwing out some weirder stuff, it overall wasn't a good look for Lambo's EVT.
Agreed, yeah.
I think he worked really hard on it for his Katowice group, so I think it was kind of hoping that a lot of that would still be there, all that practice that was put in, right? Because he did have some good TVZ for Katowice, but it doesn't seem to be, so maybe it is a stylistic thing and it'll be a bit better versus Clem, but obviously the history says otherwise.
Roddy?
Yeah, that's one more thing I would like to add, is that I feel like you have two types of pro gamers. You have the pro gamer who can sit down on whatever wonky setup and they can play amazing StarCraft. And then you've got the guys, and I definitely belong in that category too, where everything needs to be perfect and you get married to your equipment, you get married to your gear. And for years straight, like 5+ years I think, Lambo was literally the only StarCraft 2 player who played with the Razer Naga mouse, which was the mouse with the 9 buttons on the side. You should know it as a World of Warcraft fanatic yourself,
I do know it, yes.
And only a couple of weeks ago, Lambo finally switched. And obviously that's a very big switch, right? Because you go from 9 buttons on the side of your mouse that he actually used for spellcasters to a quote-unquote regular mouse. And he feels confident with it. He feels like, yeah, it's all right. But I think mentally it can obviously be very tough, right? Because the first results, whenever you switch gear, they're not the greatest. And then you're like, oh, what if I didn't switch? So it really comes down to how happy and comfortable he feels with the new gear. Like, it's been a little over a month now, but I can definitely understand for him that was a very big change, because I struggle from going from a regular mouse to a regular mouse. So going from the Naga to a regular mouse, that must be a very big change.
You guys said this last week, and I was blown away that he was using this for StarCraft, but, you know, it is what it is. All right, it is time to head over to the commentators here for this one. Clem goes up against Lambo to move towards a qualification match against Oliveira.
The Razer Naga. I mean, do not use that mouse, kids. It is just...
Dude, that's actually the craziest thing that's happened today, is learning this. I had no idea that any RTS player ever would use the Naga. That is... I mean, the only Naga I ever see in RTS is Koreans telling you to get out of the game, okay? That's wild to me, though. I'm glad that he has finally seen the light and switched to a proper mouse.
Yeah, I think most people would agree or would disagree maybe on what the best mouse is for RTS. But I think if you put up a vote, the Naga would definitely be at the bottom, right? Everyone would be like, yeah, I'm not touching that. So on the flip side, I mean, maybe this levels up Lambo over time, right? Like, because imagine playing with the Naga and being as good as he is. He would definitely win a tournament if everyone had to play the Naga. He would win every tournament.
Yeah, especially if you have to put your spells on the side buttons.
Oh, God.
All right, let's get into map number 1 on Gresvan. In the bottom right, our ex-Razor Naga user, it is Lambo.
And in the top left-hand side, his opponent, he has had his number all day long for years now. It is Clem for Liquid.
Yeah, I gotta mention one more thing, because Roddy said that he actually used the side buttons for spells. That seems so crazy to me, Cats. I always view a mouse as like it's an extension of your brain into the game, where you don't want to overload it because it's got so much to do, you know?
That's because you and I have normal brains, but Lambo, on the other hand, he's like an octopus, you know? So he's he has a brain in each of his fingers, and that's how he used the Razor Naga.
There you go. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's a perfect way to look at it. They think for themselves. He doesn't put anything into it, and the spells get casted when they get casted.
Yeah, I mean, even then, you have to make the argument that pressing on those buttons is far worse than pressing on the keyboard that is much more responsive, right? So
yeah.
There still has to be a clunkiness, like you have to exert more force to actually make it work. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad he switched, and here we are. Talking about this matchup a little bit, the desk brought it. Lambo has lost most of the games against Clem, but a lot of that, and we like to bring this up, was before Clem's rise, even when Lambo was taking a lot of those series, right? So in their last 32 series, Clem has won 29 to Lambo's 3. And he is actually on a 13 win streak as well.
Dude, that's crazy. At some point, the matchup can become more mental than anything else, right? Where it's like, if you have lost 13 series in a row against someone, it's a rare player that can look at that and just say, that's fine. I'm gonna put out my best game and beat you this time.
Yeah, I mean, the good news in those series for Lambo is that it hasn't been super weird or out of the norm for him to take a game or something like that, right? Like it's not been complete stomps, so that's something. And I know from Creed, one of Lambo's friends and practice partners to a lot of the European top players, that Lambo has some cool stuff prepared for this series in particular. So speaking to that mental game that you're bringing up, I think that in this particular instance, Lambo is prepared. And I think that a prepared Lambo is a scary Lambo. So let's see if he can make something happen and break that pattern.
Yeah, it's a good point, Cats. You know, I've always thought of Lambo actually as one of the smarter Zerg players. Although now that I've learned about how long he used the Razor Naga, maybe I reevaluate that.
You really have to, yeah.
But yeah, he is a very smart player overall. I always feel like he's the guy behind the scenes for the European Zergs that's really thinking hard on a lot of their problems. But we'll see what he has planned here. You know, he definitely did. You know, they mentioned on the analyst desk, he did prep a lot of Zerg versus Terran lately. You know, with Katowice and everything. Obviously, it didn't really go his way, but you know, this is a more, in some ways, laid back circumstances. He gets to play from home.
Yeah, most definitely. And yeah, I agree with you. I think he is kind of like part of that brain trust and big on it too, because he's very eloquent too, right? So it's not just that he has good ideas, but he can also put them into words very well and kind of like translate them for his peers to understand. And that is really important, because there's players like Raynor, for example, who, when I watch him play, like his ideas are so amazing, but when he talks about them, it's like, yeah, I just did it, you know? So yeah, there's definitely two sides of that coin, and Lambo's definitely on the more analytical side of things.
Yeah. It's like the instinct versus the intellect or something like that.
Something of that.
Of course, those young instinct players always winning, man. Clem, of course, being one of those, right? That's like how you get to be this fast, this good at multitasking. Is it just everything gets done kind of automatically in your head. Now, a little Zergling counterattack might be coming in. Lambo sets these up out at the 4th base location. We'll send a singling in, and not too much there.
Bounce on that. Yeah, and he's going to choose to pounce on that, but the Hellions are coming back. I mean, he saw this pocket of Marines, and he's going to jump on top of them, and that was a great idea from Lambo because he had enough links to take him down. The problem is the Hellions pull back, and the pullback of the SCVs from Clem is so very fast that it ends up being Lambo at a decent deficit in this early game.
Yeah, only losing 2 Marines and 1 SCV. It's too bad because if he had sent in the whole fleet when he initially sent the first Zergling, I think he could have had a very good engagement that caught Clem off guard, but doesn't go that well for him. Not the end of the world, but obviously not what he was looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Very difficult to make that decision too, right? Because if they do have the Hellions in position or the Marines, you just end up bleeding four or so circlings, and then you gotta back away anyway. So Lambo basically says, I'm just gonna use 1 circling. It's the fastest unit in the game anyway. Scout it, gets his information, and goes in right after. But those 2 or so extra seconds did cost him there greatly. So yeah, I'm with you. If he had map hacks or if he had taken a massive risk, right, different story.
Definitely. Well, sometimes you do have to play like that, especially if someone is 13-0 against you. Sometimes you just have to play blind and be like, you know, I need these certain things to go right for me. And if he's not willing to take those slight risks, then I think it's going to be a hard series for him. One thing I want to mention, though, Cats, that I notice here, this is a pretty quick drilling clause upgrade and a very quick second factory. What do you think about that?
I love it for Clem because he is so adept at using those Widow Mines. I was watching several streams just yesterday and the day before that, and whenever he matched up against Clem, I mean, Widow Mines were always getting good hits just because Clem is so good at containing the creep and then having Widow Mines pretty much in every possible exit that the Zerg can take. So it's very difficult from the Zerg perspective. Lag.
Oh my God.
Is it lag? Referee A.
Oh, Referee A. Get out of here.
As we get a glimpse into Clem's weird French keyboard.
Yeah, what is that all about? Like
what
E's with little things over them and like the and sign?
Yeah, I actually got to sit on his keyboard because he stayed here for the days leading up to Atlanta, actually, right? Because I live in Atlanta. He went at a PC setup while they didn't have one ready for him. So, you know, he installed his setup basically on my PC, and then yeah, the French keyboard is just a very different layout for sure.
You know, actually, if you've ever tried to play a game of StarCraft on a French keyboard, dude, it is something else. The buttons are everywhere different. It's kind of crazy to see.
It's insane. But yeah, I mean, we're going to have a little bit of a pause. Not too much going on in this early game. Definitely favoring Clem for the time being. We do have those double factories looking into the mine production, and that is going to be very annoying for Lambo. I mean, what you have to do basically is run in circlings in front of your army, like single circlings. Or what Cyril likes to do is he runs his army, but he constantly has to be babysitting it and looking at it, and then he stops his army and pulls the circling that is going to get targeted forward. But if you're not adept at doing that, and even if you are adept at doing that, Clem's mines are just so crazy good. So we'll see the first mine drop here.
Well, I was going to suggest, and I like what I'm seeing from Lambo, that he's throwing down a Hydralisk Den, right? Because it's not that Hydra's like super hard counter mines, but in general, I think it is the best way to go if your opponent is going mine heavy. You know, you can kind of like set it and forget it in a way to clean up the mines. So I am liking this play from Lambo. I think Ling Bane Hydra going to be a good way to play it, maybe get into those lurkers a bit later on. But right now you can see that multitasking. We have double medevacs on the sides with mines and a marine push on the creep on the edge.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And let's see what the mines are able to accomplish. Not much for the time being. Those drones are gonna... Oh, actually, the Overlord makes it so that a lot of Lings end up dying. And the first couple of Hydras are also gonna get taken down. 2 of them anyway with 1 bruised. So yeah, this is going pretty well for Clem. No!
Oh, another one comes in and will help to clean up another queen. 16 drones fall. And
at the same time,
a ton of Lings died there as well. So this was absolutely brutal. Now look at this. Clem hitting in the front here with the little Bioforce and picks it up before it really takes any damage. Clem's multitasking really on display here.
Really on display, and I love that the Observer was showing kind of like the remnants of that multitasking on the other side of things, where Lambo wasn't mining his 3rd or his 4th base for a while rather, and it's just been a lot of chaos, and this is kind of where Clem thrives, and he's not gonna stop pushing the pedal here. He's gonna continue to just apply all the pressure that he can, and Lambo in a world of trouble now.
This is a pretty bad situation, honestly. This is rough. You see that Lambo is instantly going to try to refill his drone population here a little bit. He did lose a lot, as you can see. Clem already 2 times on the cost efficiency over Lambo. But, you know, maybe Lambo has some potential to come back here still. He's definitely got to save this hatchery. You're not going to be allowed to let a base fall. And look at that. Just seriously, Clem is always attacking multiple places at once.
Yeah, and I love what you were saying about the Hydras against Mines. Like, on paper, they are the hard counter to Mines, right? Because they actively outrange them. So if you always have the Hydras and an Overseer right in front of the Hydras, you should technically just deal with the Mines automatically. But it is the case that Zerg always has, like, the melee units, the Lings and Banelings, and the Hydras are not always, like, kind of like working together with the Overseer, right? Like, the Overseer tends to lag a little bit behind when the units are on creep. So ultimately, it's very difficult. It's an attention thing for the most part that Lambo's going to have to deal with expertly here to try and even out or come back into this game, and it's looking near impossible.
No, it's getting worse and worse. Look at these hits, like another 14 drones, a ton of Lings just died right there. Lambo is bleeding off everywhere. He's down a good 50 supply as well. More mine drops come down. He's trying to split. He's trying to not take damage, but he can't stop anything Clem is doing.
Yeah, because Clem is doing so much. I mean, it's so difficult to keep up, and Lambo's just gonna tap out of this one. And yeah, that's really not what he was looking for. A little bit of a stomp on the side of the French.
That was particularly brutal. Like that, I don't even really know what to say. What do you do as a Lambo when you were just completely destroyed there? Like, he even went into the Hydras, which I think was a good play, but he just can't keep up with how quickly Clem is switching screens, harassing, dropping, pushing everywhere all at once.
Yeah, everywhere all at once. I love that movie. And I mean, Clem, he kind of took a page from Time's book, potentially. Last week, when Oliveira played against Lambo, he actually went for this type of mind play. Maybe not as erratic as Clem's, but it still killed like 40 drones or something from Lambo. So maybe Clem looking at that and thinking maybe Lambo's defense wasn't particularly good against that. And on the Lambo side of things, you've lost twice in a row to this kind of mind drop opening, which, at least to my understanding, isn't the most common in the matchup, right? So yeah, maybe a weak point that's being exploited there too.
Yeah, it could be. You know, some people just have certain weaknesses like this. Like, I know, for instance, from the Korean scene that I've casted for so long, DRG, man, you make a bunch of mines against him, he just falls apart. And it seems like Lambo, at least in this game, did as well.
Yeah, most definitely. I can see it for DRG too, just like from trying to think back to how he likes to play. He's extremely swarmy and he takes traits very decisively and he switches screens very often. So he's not the type of player to babysit his army a lot, right? He kind of just gets set up and goes, and that's where mines are best.
Yeah. What do you think that Lambo needs to do to kind of shore up some of these weaknesses here against Clem? Does he need to play a more aggressive game? Does he need a different composition? It's really hard to even imagine what he can do when a game is that one-sided, but what would you say?
I would say you have to be more proactive and take control of the game, kind of just to make it so that the game is happening on your terms, and then have a plan to execute on top of that. And that's kind of like the vibe that I got from Creed, telling me that Lambo had been preparing for this and that there was some cool stuff to be shown, because you don't show cool stuff reactively usually. It has to be a plan where you plan on being aggressive, but it's usually not in the Zerg's best, it's just not that great for Zerg to be aggressive usually because of the creep spread, right? You're not going to have that creep to work with. So there are very few options to try and be proactive, to try and dictate the game. And I'm curious if Lambo has found one here, but I guess he's going to have to bring it to this game if it's going to happen at all.
Well, he's going to have to bring something, or he is going to end up losing this match very, very quickly. It looks like we are ready to get into game number 2 here on Dragon Scales. In the bottom right, having a tough game number 1, it's Lambo.
And in the top left-hand side, playing for Team Liquid and having a wonderful game number 1, it's Clem.
All right. Let's see what Lambo's plan is going to be. Looks like a little gas first here from Clem. But yeah, I hope he does try to dictate something. But like you said, I think early game aggression from Zerg is one of the weaker things you can do. Obviously, you need to sometimes mix it in, and he will be here. This is a pull first.
It is a pull first, no gas follow-up yet. I mean, this can just be a safety pull. This can just be kind of just trying to sneak out links. If Clem doesn't scout, then you could get a deny on the CC on the low ground. And generally speaking, you're going to be safer against the proxies and the likes. I don't know that, I don't think he's going to be aggressive just because he hasn't taken the gas yet. But yeah, he's rather doing the opposite, right? He's playing safe, it feels like, which, I'm not sure if it's the play.
The thing is, sometimes it is the right choice for your opponent to go ahead and do something like a double proxy barracks play or a triple proxy barracks play. And maybe he's thinking that one of the easiest ways for him to win this game is to stomp out an opening like that. I mean, that's a lot that you're falling back on your opponent having to do. So, it doesn't look like it's going to be a solid opener. But let's see if he has something else planned here, something else mixed in.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, they've played each other so much as well that it's probably the case that Clem has an opening that falls behind against this, right? And Lambo would know that better than most people. But Clem is actually choosing to scout with the SCV this time around, and he'll spot the links. That'll make it easy for his Reaper to stay back home until a second unit pops up to defend his command center, as he actually chooses to leave. So this link could actually get a delay on the command center if the Reaper leaves the base, but now the Reaper's rerouting to look for it.
Yeah, and good scouting there from Clem. I do like to see little variations like that. It's like some games scout with the SCV, some games don't, because it really can be additionally punishing, especially if it was one of these builds, where you run the Lings around, you wait for the Reaper to kind of show up, and you slow that command center. So he doesn't do that in particular this time. It's just a couple Lings in that opener, but it's good from Clem to kind of get in there and see that, because I think at this point, anything that goes wrong for Lambo could be a bit demoralizing.
No, completely agreed. As Clem is now going to be going for the 2 Hellions and the starport as well to follow up, so this is looking pretty standard on his side. I'm just keeping my eye on Lambo to try and see if he's going to do anything out of the ordinary here. He has his link set up to try and surround the Reaper that jumps up from his third base triangle location into his main, but yeah, nothing really particularly special. A lair, okay, that's kind of normal too, though, right? Like, we expect the Veiling Nest to follow, so he's really not playing anything super crazy here in this early game, as the Reaper will do a really nice job dislodging one of the queens and sending her out of creep, so she won't be able to contribute, as the Lynx do a great job of kind of slowing down the Reapers and Hellions going up that ramp, and that means one of those Hellions will be taken out if he tries to poke in right away, and that will make it difficult for Clem to find much damage with this.
Yeah, this actually felt like pretty much perfect micro on both sides. I actually really enjoy engagements like this where you watch it and you just shake your head yes at both players. Like they both try to optimize that as much as is possible. Now, the second little group of Hellions do run in and fry a few drones, fry a few Lings, and there are some damage drones in here as well. So, oh my god, Clem is suddenly getting so much damage.
A little bit too much. 9 workers end up falling to that follow-up, and that is just absolutely nasty. Another one. That's gonna be 11. Oh, geez.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
Ooh, that's not what we're looking for there. That's unfortunate. Very, very one-sided. I think Lambo quite frustrated, losing so many drones at the beginning. Honestly, when you lose that many drones, I can't fault him for GGing. You need like a perfect opening to be able to beat Clem.
Yeah, I mean, if we look back at that game, right, like the third queen that was in the natural that got bounced off with a grenade, if that one had stayed in the natural because it didn't contribute anything by going up the ramp, that would have been much better, right? And on certain maps, the creep connects a little bit better for the queens going from the natural to the main as well. On this map, there's a little bit of a gap, and that made it really awkward for Lambo to transition his queens, which was his main source of defense, and just kind of ends up falling apart. And yeah, I mean, that was brutal. That was not as serious, not much of one.
No, not too much to say on that, but I guess let's hear what the analysts think about it anyways.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. I just sat down to eat my food, and apparently the series is all already over. ZG, Roddy, what is ZG? Where do we even start? There's not much to start on, I suppose.
Yeah, that was a great throw by Artosis, because I don't really know what to add, just more Oh, sounds.
Yeah.
That was not pretty. I was not up to Lambo's, I guess, potential, but that's sometimes how it goes versus Clem.
That is, especially, I mean, you can't even really take much from the second game, considering how it ends. And, Lambo obviously understands that if game one's not going to go his way, Roddy, then game two with that kind of start is going to be an absolute bleak outlook.
No, of course you can try to play it out, but Lambo has been there. He also knows what it takes to beat Clem, and he probably knows that if he has a start like that, that it's just completely pointless to keep on playing. But always feels obviously a little bit anticlimactic to us, but we can all understand it. That first game,
Absolutely.
like, it wasn't going fantastic, but it did kind of feel like, hey, maybe this can go somewhere. And then right when you have that feeling, obviously the Widow Mines did way too much damage. Lambo got a bit unfortunate as well, because against the first mine, he actually pulled all the drones away, but then there were some links running in, and somehow the Widow Mine shot connected with the link, and it exploded all over 8 drones. And obviously at that point the floodgates were open. I don't really have much to add, James. Obviously historically we know that Clem is very dominant against Lambo. Online, Clem is an absolute animal in this matchup. Offline sometimes too, not always, but he definitely has shown some great offline TVZ. It was the worst draw for Lambo. We said that in the beginning of the day, and I think those words couldn't be more true.
Yeah, they echoed through. Let's take a look at the highlights brought to you by Aramco for this series.
I wonder what they got.
It's going to be a short one, I think, as we take a look at game one. I like the idea of the Zergling run by to start things off, CG, but unfortunately the Hellions coming back really kind of put a stunt in its growth.
Yeah, I mean, if you do that some minutes later and then maybe distract Clem from doing his Widow Mine drops, it's probably effective in an indirect sense, but still, and the cast was brought up that if Lambo had just been able to get something going for him to be a little more aggressive, then that could have changed the dynamic. But entirely defensive, entirely on his side of the map, basically for both games, and Clem just looks at that like a buffet, It's like, oh, the Zerg's not going to do anything to me? Great, let's just like micro my little heart out.
Well, yeah, you saw the highlights from game two there. All right. It was done very swiftly. Let's take a look at the bracket. We've got ourselves Oliveira versus Clem confirmed in the upper bracket. This does give me shades of the previous bracket here, Roddy, looking at how this game might potentially play out, because Hiramari looked great versus Oliveira. I mean, yes, it's very different terrains, but now Clem goes up against Oliveira. What are you thinking there?
I honestly thought that you were going to say, that looks like a TVT best of 5 that has Roddy casting written all over it.
Actually,
that's all my colleagues have. No, but I'm feeling you, James. Obviously, they played against each other in Katowice, and they had an insanely awesome, fantastic game on Gresvan. So I'm looking forward to it. And I have no idea who I favor there. Like, Clem is definitely not invincible in TVT, but neither is Oliveira at the moment.
Cham versus Lambo down towards the bottom, best of 3. That is an elimination match effectively, or you get through it and qualify onto that qualification match down there. But maybe Lambo has a bit of a better chance there, ZG? What are you thinking?
I think so. I said back in Cham's series that it's the most favorable situation for him. And I still think that's true. But then as we pivot and kind of focus on Lambo's story, that's still probably the best draw for Lambo as well. So it is kind of best for both of them. But of course, only one can win. And I think just statistically, right, Lambo is favored. It's just that Cham has had a couple of really good ZVZs even recently. And just in general, I think does better in that matchup than ZVT.
All right, well, what's better than 2 TVZs? It's 3 TVZs. After the break, we have got ourselves Special going up against Elaser. So go to a break, back for more Gamers Without Borders, more TVZ after this. See you soon.